Pay close attention to this 2008 Heritage Foundation report. The financial sector is flat on its back. Government is working hard to revive it. A new dose of regulation and the uncertainty that it will cause is the last thing an ailing financial sector needs. Did you catch that? On the surface, everything sounds normal, like something your average conservative economist might be expected to say in the aftermath of a financial disaster. But below the surface, our Heritage Foundation friend here has done something much more sneaky. In the space of 10 seconds, he links the US economy to a human body no less than 4 separate times. Don't believe me? Let's look back at it. The economy is flat on its back. The government is trying to revive it. It's getting a dose of regulation. It's still ailing. But so what? Why does this matter? People use metaphors all the time. Who cares if the Heritage Foundation is using them too? Well, I was just about to get to that before you so rudely interrupted me. Anyways, or was I? Oh yeah. As a progressive, you should care about the metaphors we use to describe and understand our world because that's the only way to defend yourself from the sneaky ways that political actors use them to insert dangerous ideas directly into your brain without you even noticing. Kind of like a linguistic Trojan horse. More importantly, if you want to understand how conservatives win people over to their side while spewing some of the most nonsensical, absurd rhetoric imaginable.
In Springfield, they're eating the dogs, the people that came in. They're eating the cats. They're eating the pets of the people that live there.
As well as how you can negate that rhetoric to sway your mom Linda, your family, your friend Wilson, and Americans in general towards a more grounded, empathetic, and progressive worldview, then you need to understand the metaphors running subconsciously through every American's mind. Let's go back to the economy as a human body metaphor and break it down. The economy is flat on its back. The government is trying to revive it. It's getting a dose of regulation. It's still ailing. On the surface, the only thing that our Heritage Foundation commentator is saying here is that the economy is broken and our government is trying to fix it, and regulation is the wrong way to do it. But when you add the comparison to the human body, you get a whole nother level of meaning. Each time someone says something like this, your mind instantly makes the connection between your understanding of the economy and the image of a sick person laying on a hospital bed. But it goes deeper than that. You don't just receive the notion that the economy is a sick person in bed, you also receive the entire system of assumptions, facts, and implications that come along with your understanding of the human body. And subconsciously, you link the economy to that entire system and all of its different properties. When we think about our daily bodily functions, whether that be breathing, eating, or digesting, we typically don't need too much outside support. At least you shouldn't. I still need my mom to say, "Here comes the airplane," for every bite that I take, but that's besides the point. Sure, you go to the hospital in an emergency situation, but besides that, you'd probably be pretty pissed if someone came along and tried to tamper with your everyday bodily functions. So if we're to accept the metaphor of the economy as a human body, we would also be forced to subconsciously accept the idea that outside or government intervention would not only be annoying, but also potentially dangerous, just as it's annoying and potentially dangerous for someone to tamper with your everyday bodily functions. But it goes deeper than that. When we think about our bodies, we understand that sometimes we get sick, and that is natural, unavoidable, and perhaps even expected. And for the most part, those illnesses just go away on their own. We just chill for a couple of days in bed, binging Avatar: The Last Airbender for the 15th time, and we start feeling better. No doctor needed. Apply this to the economy, and we accept that recessions and bubbles, like the flu or the common cold, are natural, unavoidable even, and they will eventually go away on their own. No government action needed. Armed with this metaphor, it is so easy for conservatives to advocate for less government intervention, less regulation, less action. Just let the free market do its thing, Let it sleep for a little bit, maybe give it some chicken soup, and it will eventually recover. But that mindset and that set of assumptions does something even more sneaky and destructive, if you can believe it. It willfully forgets to place any blame on the financial villains, and it leaves out the greedy actions that they've taken to get us to where we are now. It leaves out the story of corporate greed, the financialization of the housing market, and the excessive speculation on property values by financial institutions and big investment banks. It leaves out predatory lending practices, and it leaves out the aggressive deregulation of the Reagan administration that allowed for all of this to happen in the first place. When Democrats and Republicans implicitly compare the American economy to a human body, whether knowingly or unknowingly, they are leaving out key parts of the story of how our economy functions and why we are where we are today. So every time you hear someone say that the economy is suffering or sick, no longer thriving, unhealthy, or when they say that it is recovering or healthy or going through a growth spurt, you now understand the dangerous underlying assumptions that are baked in. This is how they get you. This is how they get you and your friends and your family to subconsciously accept the corporate worldview, even when you don't want to, which is no bueno. That means no good for those of you that don't speak Spanish. But it gets worse. When people talk about the economy as a human body, it's pretty easy to spot, and therefore pretty easy to brace yourself against. When you hear billionaire hedge fund manager Ray Dalio say,
"It is like the plaque building in the heart. And so we are now then going to have not only more debt and more debt service encroaching on our spending, but it's also going to mean that we're going to have a supply-demand problem, and this is a heart attack, like an economic heart attack."
You can easily point that out and understand what implicit assumptions he's trying to force upon you under the table. But some metaphors are so widely used and so difficult to spot that even Albert Einstein wouldn't be able to spot them in action. Mostly because he didn't speak English. For the rest of this video, we will discuss Americans' conceptions of the economy, inequality, taxes, the government, and freedom. Some of these metaphors we will see are literally and metaphorically a matter of life and death. And unless you understand how they function to subconsciously sway our minds, you'll be vulnerable to conservative talking points without even knowing it. The next three metaphors we'll discuss are all about the economy because it's so central to the American political discourse today, and because the economic well-being of all Americans is at the forefront of the agendas of so many progressive activists, elected officials, and advocates. So if you don't give a single shit about the economy because you punted your life savings into crypto in 2008 and have just been riding off the spoils ever since, then 1, help me out here, like I'm struggling, and 2, feel free to skip to this timestamp right here. Okay, are they gone? Dumbasses. I don't want them here for this part anyways. Okay, now that the goons are gone, you and me, we can get down to business. One of the sneakiest and most destructive metaphors compares the economy to water. That's the genius of Reagan's
trickle-down economics.
Trickle-down economics.
Private enterprise. Trickle down. But that's a pejorative word. That's a nasty word that they invented.
It worked okay for Reagan.
It worked perfectly for Ronald Reagan.
Trickle-down economics is a hoax. It doesn't work. We've now tried it with Ronald Reagan, with George W. Bush, and now with Donald Trump twice. And what we get is nothing trickles down. And we also get an incredible, larger federal deficit and debt.
For anyone who's heard the reasoning behind it, trickle-down economics might just be the most obvious sham on the entire planet. Give the billionaires more money so that they can then trickle a tiny stream of that money to the working class? Like, come on. Like, what are we doing here? For Pete's sake, like, does anyone believe that that would work? I mean, even the name is ridiculous. But none of that matters. What matters is the Trojan horse that comes along with the words. By comparing the economy to water, we imply a couple of things, all of which, like the body metaphor, directly facilitate conservative policies. If the economy is water, then, like the water cycle, the economy is a self-regulating system, which should not be tampered with by meddling humans. If money is a liquid, then it moves freely, according to natural laws of gravity, and any human intervention will simply prevent it from trickling down to where it naturally wants to go. Like the tides in an ocean or the rivers and the rain, money and the economy are not affected by human will. So each time we talk about the way that money flows to the place that will make the most profit, or how we're going to go through an economic storm, or how spending will ripple throughout the economy, we are sending the implicit message that the economy follows complex natural rules, making it ungovernable. And the only way to get a better economic outcome is to let it ebb and flow as the moon and the stars, or perhaps the rain gods, see fit. Any attempts to regulate the economy, like trying to control the direction and flow of a river, will only result in disaster. It's easy to see how this metaphor naturally lends itself to less government intervention, less government regulation, and more of simply allowing corporations and the free market to do whatever the fuck they want. Once we started to naturally and independently associate the economy with water, that is precisely when we were trapped, boxed into the assumptions that serve the conservative project of deregulation and minimal government intervention. But, as I hope is clear by now, the economy isn't a body of water that trickles down like conservatives would love for you to believe. So, what is it then? The economy isn't some nebulous concept that surpasses human understanding, such as the chaos of a thunderstorm or the tides of an ocean. No, the economy is nothing more than a bunch of people producing, consuming, and interacting with each other. And because of that simple fact, it is clear that there are plenty of things that America can do to steer the economy in the right direction. Economic guardrails, for example, would have helped to prevent the 2008 financial crisis. But if all of America conceptualizes the economy as water, then it's hard for us to see the point of guardrails. The tides will come and go, guardrails or not. The river will flow where it wants and take the guardrails with it. And yet, despite the destructive assumptions that this metaphor conveys, even liberals and progressives can't stop themselves from using it. Nowadays, referring to the economy as water is habitual, if not the outright norm.
Leo, what do these numbers tell you about the state of the economy right now?
Good morning, Diane. So these numbers tell us that the economy has basically been treading water.
Folks, economic storm clouds are gathering, and that's the subject of tonight's riff.
The money is pouring in from all over the world. Think about this. Every day, trillions of dollars sloshes around the world. It's looking for a good yield, that is, interest, and it's looking for safety. You get both in America. That's why money from overseas is flooding in here.
Okay, today we are going to talk about flows of wealth and how people get rich.
In addition to justifying deregulation and ruling out government intervention, this metaphor, like the previous, shifts the blame for our economic troubles away from the large corporations, away from the billionaires, and leaves it up in the air. If the money flows to wherever it wants to go, then your financial struggles are due to the rain gods. Should have been the son of a wealthy oil magnate. Idiot. Maybe you should have prayed harder. Did you try that? I bet you didn't. Don't speak about your employer who has way too much power over you and who pays you way less than you make for the company. Don't speak about the fact that your money magically disappears each month while Elon Musk magically gets $3 billion richer each month. If the economy is water, then the money flows to its rightful place, which is out of your pockets when you pay rent, grocery, and utilities, and directly into the pockets of the billionaires. As progressives, if we treat the economy like it's water, we simply feed the conservative arguments by tacitly accepting their framing. And at that point, we are fighting a battle on their conceptual turf. We'll never win. All right. Water and the human body tell the conservative story about what the economy is. But for any economic worldview to be compelling, it must tell the story of why the economy is the way that it is. Or, in other words, the role that it plays in human life. And again, the conservatives have this story on lock. Take a look at this speech by Milton Friedman, father of the Chicago School of Economics and economic advisor to Ronald Reagan.
There's a fundamental economic law which has never been contradicted to the best of my knowledge. And that is, if you pay more for something, there will tend to be more of that something available. If the amount you're willing to pay for anything goes up, somehow or other, somebody will supply more of that thing. We have made immoral behavior far more profitable. We have, in the course of the changes in our society, been establishing greater and greater incentives on people to behave in ways that most of us regard as immoral. On each of us separately, we've all been doing it.
Our best friend, Milton Friedman here, is suggesting that the economy's role in human affairs is to encourage good behavior, such as working hard and starting a successful business, and to disincentivize bad behavior. The economy is an enforcer of morals. If you've ever talked to any conservative-leaning person about the economy, this language should come as no surprise. It's the same thought process behind every conservative economic policy position, from cutting taxes to defunding the social safety net to privatization, and it's the same worldview that gives rise to the classic conservative tropes, from the welfare queen to lazy immigrants taking advantage of the system. First and foremost, the thought process goes, we shouldn't punish American entrepreneurs and business owners for succeeding. Why should we tax the hardworking billionaires? They're creating jobs and economic development and success for everyone. Why should we regulate their businesses? That would be akin to punishing the best and brightest Americans, when really, we should be incentivizing more people to go out there and work hard so that they can be like them too. Similarly, this is the thought process that has justified the defunding of critical American social safety nets, including the gutting of Medicare, Medicaid, and SNAP food assistance access for millions of Americans through Trump's Big Beautiful Bill. We should only be giving Medicaid to people that work for it, because we don't want to incentivize people to freeload off the system. Again, the role of the economy is to enforce a harsh and inflexible set of moral rules on the American population, ultimately justifying policy that will harm millions and millions of Americans who rely on these programs to get by. This conception of the economy and economic policy as a means to enforce rigid moral values onto American society is obviously wrong and absurdly destructive. This metaphor promotes and actively justifies taking money from the poor and giving it directly to the billionaires. Seriously, that's the exact long-term outcome of gutting the social safety net and cutting taxes on the ultra-wealthy. And this brings along with it the suffering of countless Americans who no longer have access to life-saving medical treatment or food to feed their families. But alright, enough doom and gloom. Let's talk about how progressives can reframe the economic conversation around metaphors that actually serve an empathetic and just worldview, rather than constantly having to fight on the opposition's turf. Instead of conceptualizing the economy as water, or a human body, or a moral enforcer, progressives would do well to reframe it as a vehicle that we are riding in and steering on our journey towards our collective economic well-being. Let's break it down. The economy is a vehicle. What does that sound like? Well, we can talk about how the economy is on the right or wrong track. We can talk about how we need to rev up our economic engine, about how job losses are accelerating, how the healthcare sector is experiencing friction, how inequality is creating a barrier in the path of the working class, and how we need guardrails to help keep the economy on track and steer it in the right direction. If we want to get a little freaky with it, we can talk about how the billionaires and mega corporations have forcefully taken the wheel and are now steering us off a cliff. What does this metaphor do for us? Firstly, a vehicle, whether it be a train, a car, a boat, or a plane, is always made by humans. And you may be saying, actually, cars are made by robots, not humans. Shut the fuck up, okay? You get my drift. Okay, secondly, not only is a vehicle man-made, its express purpose is to serve human interests, namely to bring people from one place to the next. The economy is no different. It's a complex man-made entity that is built to serve human interests, specifically to carry us on our journey towards our collective economic well-being. Thirdly, a vehicle always has a driver. Actually, Tesla is developing full self-driving autonomous car technology that is set to release in 2027. Shut up. Me personally, I wouldn't step foot in a Tesla without a driver, okay?
Now the LiDAR had surprised me. It was time to see if Tesla could as well. Oh boy. And sadly, it did not.
Anyways, what's important is that when the ordinary American thinks of a car or a train or a plane, they also necessarily think of a driver or a conductor or a pilot. If we translate this logic to the economy, it suggests that the economy must have someone in the driver's seat, more specifically, the government. The government neglecting its duty to enact policy to steer the economy in the right direction would be like falling asleep at the wheel. And this in turn promotes a different policy direction, a policy of responsible stewardship of the economy rather than the deregulation and government non-intervention conveyed by the water and human body metaphors. Okay, so I know what the economy is, but what about why the economy is the way that it is? What's the role of the economy? Wow, I'm so glad that you asked, or I'm so glad that I asked. If the economy is a vehicle, then its role is not to force people to work or to incentivize endless growth by deregulating businesses and cutting taxes. Rather, its role is to steward us collectively on the journey towards financial well-being. That makes much more sense. After all, the economy was first formed by individuals bartering with each other for collective benefit. I have, 5 cows, you have 10 stone pickaxes, you need cows so you can drink milk, I need pickaxes so I can go and mine some iron. We agree to swap 1 cow for 1 pickaxe and we both benefit. Scaled up, the economy is no different. Like a vehicle, it's a man-made instrument whose purpose is to materially improve our lives. Once it stops doing that, we have a problem. Once it turns down a path that only benefits people like Elon Musk and Larry Ellison and Mark Zuckerberg, while hardworking Americans are left to the wolves, we have a problem. A problem that we can only fix by taking action and steering ourselves back in the direction of collective economic empowerment. Clearly, transforming the way we talk about the economy can completely transform what solutions and tools are at our disposal to address our economy's most pressing problems. But while it's important to keep our economic story straight, it's just as important to understand the countless other metaphors that underpin and influence American politics to avoid the pitfalls that would instantly undermine our reasoning, whatever the subject may be. It would take me an entire week to cover them all, so let's discuss the most important ones, and hopefully this understanding will help you identify new metaphorical systems in our discourse for yourself. Let's start with freedom. Pretty much everything under the sun can be talked about in the language of freedom. And because it's one of the pillars of our nation's founding, it is a particularly potent metaphor. We have the well-known freedom of speech, freedom of the press, freedom to bear arms. We talk about abortion as a freedom to not have the government interfere with our bodies. And some conservatives talk about not getting vaccines as the freedom, again, to not have the government interfere with our bodies. In all of these cases, we talk about freedom as freedom from the government. The government isn't allowed to limit my speech. The government isn't allowed to take away my guns. But this isn't the only definition of freedom. We can also talk about freedom in terms of positive liberties and opportunities. For example, Medicare for All will provide Americans with freedom from fear about crippling medical debt. Strong and well-funded public schools provides our children with freedom to pursue opportunities to achieve their full potential, no matter their lot in life. Environmental protections ensure our freedom to have clean water to drink and fresh air to breathe. The problem with always talking about freedom in the first way, freedom from the government, is that it then makes it harder for us to make a coherent argument for the government to actually get its shit together and do things that benefit the American people. If we keep repeating the idea that the government can't do this or the government can't do that, then when we say the government should give everyone healthcare, we end up sounding insane. Don't get me wrong, I wholeheartedly believe that we should call the government out on its overreaches, especially now when Donald Trump and his billionaire cronies are perpetrating more authoritarian overreach than we've seen for generations. What I'm saying is that we cannot focus on these violations alone, or we'll risk promoting the idea that government cannot and should not do anything. In addition to calling out our government's transgressions, we need to simultaneously demand that it do more to guarantee positive freedoms for the American people. If freedom is on one end of the spectrum of things Americans love to things Americans hate, then on the complete other end of the spectrum is taxes. We talk about taxes like they're an affliction, which is self-defeating if we want to implement a wealth tax or increase the corporate tax rate in order to combat the absolutely busted levels of wealth inequality that ravages our nation. Despite this fact, talking about tax like it's an illness is so common, even for progressives, that we don't even notice when we're doing it. The George W. Bush administration was the first to popularize this way of thinking by proposing a tax relief plan, which was then solidified by the Democrats at the time, who offered their own tax relief counterplan. But think about what the word relief means for a moment. In order for there to be relief, there must be an affliction, namely taxes. Nowadays, this language is so common that even Democrats and progressives use it left and right, talking about tax relief or relieving the tax burden, all the while reinforcing the conservative framing of taxes as an illness. But taxes, while frustrating, aren't inherently bad. We built roads and schools and hospitals where we wouldn't have been able to otherwise. The problem with taxes is that the ultra-wealthy aren't paying their fair share, and they're hoarding all of the wealth generated by working Americans to themselves. Instead of talking about taxes as something that we hate, like an affliction, we need to instead talk about them like an investment in our shared prosperity, where everyone, including the billionaires, have to pay their fair share. As the saying goes, nothing is certain except death and taxes. Benjamin Franklin. Speaking of Benjamin Franklin, he's dead, which is why our next metaphor is about death. Okay, that might have been the shittiest transition possible, but let's roll with it. Life and death are extremely emotionally charged, so they are some of the most potent metaphors out there, and conservatives are just itching to use them at every possible turn. For example, framing the abortion discourse around pro-choice versus pro-life, or calling the estate or inheritance tax the death tax. Once the argument is framed in terms of life or death, it's really, really, really hard to argue against, and it's super easy for ordinary conservatives like your mom and your great Uncle Larry to repeat. I don't think that this is even because they necessarily believe it, but rather because they believe that others will easily believe it. Like, it's so easy to just be like, death tax bad, am I right? Yes, praise me for knowing about politics. Anyways, those are just my random musings. Again, we don't have to fall into the trap of arguing on conservative turf. The task then is to proactively force the conversation into topics and framings that benefit the progressive cause, instead of constantly just reacting to whatever it is Donald Trump says next. All right, enough of this metaphorical business. Metaphors and political messaging are important, but I want to make it very clear that they are disgustingly useless without good policy and disciplined organizing. The way you talk can only get you so far. What's left is to get out there and engage with the people and actually fight for the things that will materially improve our lives. If you're just a normal guy named Fred, you can do this too by joining an organization, or by speaking at your local city council meeting, or by hosting a dinner party with your friends. I have a special place of hatred in my heart for progressives or Democrats that believe that they can accomplish anything and everything through better social media, or by starting a podcast, or by endlessly trying to dilute their positions to try to appeal to the mystical moderate voter rather than standing on business. We have a lot of work to do, folks. Understanding the metaphors at play in our politics is just the first step. Okay, thank you for making it to the end of this video, Jesus Christ. If you're interested in learning more about anything I discussed today, check out these books, which I drew on while researching for this video. Metaphors We Live by George Lakoff. Moral Politics by George Lakoff. Don't Think of an Elephant by George Lakoff, and Don't Buy It by Anat Shenker-Osorio. This video took me a ton of time, like weeks, to research and script, so I would really appreciate if you would like the video and comment your thoughts. Again, thank you so much for watching, and I hope that you have a wonderful rest of your day. Bye-bye.